Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us first on CNBC. I want to kick off by asking you to walk us through the numbers when it comes to this budget, because it seems as if you've got a higher budget deficit projected and you've also got cuts to spending. Is this an austerity budget?
Thank you very much. I think before I speak about 2020, I think 2019 worth mentioning also. 2019 is about to conclude, and it is about to conclude with a lot of success for the government. We promised that we will work and control our expenditure in a manner that would not impact the economic activity. We delivered that. We have seen growth in a lot of sectors that we have not seen for the last 4-5 years, particularly sectors that we are focusing on. Financial sector is growing at levels that we have not seen in the last few years. Construction is growing at 3.4%, while only 3 years ago it was in minus. We have seen the tourism sector, entertainment sector, sports sectors growing at 5%, 6%, 7% in the second quarter of this year. So a lot of success is taking place. We are empowering the private sector, and we have seen a growth that we have not seen before in the private sector. The private sector is growing at 3.4% in the second quarter of this year. So a lot of work from the government over the last 3 years that started yielding results. That actually helped even this year. We started the year saying our budget is 1,106 billion riyals. We ended up the year with 1,048 billion Saudi riyals. That's about 50 billion less spending, because we enabled the private sector and we are more efficient in our spending. We did not impact the private sector. We did not impact the growth in the economy. We have seen non-oil GDP growing at 2.5%. Same is going to continue next year. Next year is a continuation of a journey that we've started 3 years ago, where we are focusing on efficiency in spending, enabling the private sector. And private sector, we announced last week after the cabinet meeting that we are putting about 20 projects that we would have otherwise funded through the budget to the private sector through PPP projects in the water sector and the water treatment sector and others.
So when you look at this budget, how much of an impact is the fact that we're coming up on another year of lower oil prices, and the fact that the energy minister last week decided to push for even deeper cuts to production? How is that factoring in to your numbers?
Our numbers, as announced just now, takes into consideration all of this. But let us just go back. Why did we have Vision 2030? We had it because we wanted to diversify our economy and our revenues, and we have been successful. If you look at just the last 4 years, we quadrupled our non-oil revenues. It now represents about 31% of the budget, when it was only 10% of the budget a few years back alone. So we are trying to increase our non-oil revenue to avoid this impact of volatility on the oil revenue side. We took a cautious approach on our estimation for next year in the oil revenues, just to ensure that we are looking at the world economy, the impact of the world growth, the impact of the trade tension, and others.
At this point, they're suggesting that there could even be an extension past the first quarter of the kind of cuts that we saw last week coming out of OPEC. How does that impact your numbers specifically?
I would not imagine that it would. We took a very conservative approach when we worked with the Ministry of Energy and then with SEDA in the Royal Court to make sure that our estimation takes into consideration what our expectations with our partners in OPEC and OPEC Plus in terms of the oil revenue. But we are going to see also good growth in non-oil revenue of about 5% compared to this year. So that will also compensate in part.
When His Royal Highness announced Vision 2030 and announced the Aramco IPO, there was an expectation that you could see as much as $100 billion in revenue off the back. At this point, it seems as if that's going to be as much as a quarter of that original number. How is that going to impact Saudi Arabia's finances?
Two things. I think this is a very important question. I am very glad really to see that we have been able to execute earlier than what I anticipated when we interviewed before the IPO in a very successful way. We have seen a demand that is overwhelming, about 5 times oversubscribed. The revenue, as part of the Vision 2030 strategy, the revenue that we are going to get from the IPO would go to PIF to fund PIF investments, a lot of it inside Saudi Arabia to actually diversify the economy, to stimulate the economy, to support the growth and create more jobs. And some of it will go internationally. That continues to be the same. PIF is going to also receive the proceeds from the sale of SABIC as and when it closes. That will also provide it with more funding. You would not imagine that an institution like PIF will be able to spend that much money at a very short period of time. So actually staging it might be a good thing for them.
Were you disappointed that they were unable to reach that $2 trillion valuation?
I have always said, and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, when I was asked last year, he said the market will determine this. We believe actually the value of the company is in excess of $2 trillion. The price that is determined by the market is the price that is determined by the market.
When you look at what's going to happen next, particularly within the area of Saudi's reserves, there has been a perception over the last several months in particular that this is a country that is gradually running out of money. Can you clarify those numbers today?
That is actually very interesting. We have the 3rd largest foreign reserves in the world. Unlike so many other countries, we also have government reserves, deposits with the central bank that other governments don't have. That stands today at about 500 billion Saudi riyals, short of 500 billion Saudi riyals. Our aim is actually to slowly slow the drawdown and then rebuild the reserves as we control expenditure and grow our revenue. So
they're wrong. You're not running out of money.
No, we are not running out of money. And if you look at our balance sheet, it's not only deposits with Aramco. We have a lot more deposit with SAMA. We have a lot more assets. We have the PIF, which is a government assets that is being managed by PIF, which is in excess of trillion Saudi riyals. They are going to get more revenues, even more. So they will have more asset under management. We have other assets that are being run by other institutions. We have significant funds that are sitting in the development funds, as you know, which supports the private sector in loans that these are repaid and reinvested in the economy. So there is a lot of assets at our disposal if we need them. I don't think we will in any near future.
Sir, finally, just to ask you about a number, 182 billion riyals set aside for military spending. President Trump has mentioned again and again that when it comes to securing the oil here in Saudi Arabia, the kingdom is prepared to pay for that. How much of that money is going to support the activities of U.S. troops in this country as they protect the facilities of Aramco?
Our relationship with the U.S. is strategic and will continue to be. I think the security of the energy for the world is very important for the world, and we have seen the leaders after the attack on Aramco facilities coming together and making it clear that energy supply, world energy supply is very important for the world. We will, in Saudi Arabia, continue to protect our people and our territory, and we will not spare any resources to do that. And we are working with the US and others to ensure that we are putting the right assets in place to protect our territory.
In terms of that outlay, though, how much of that money is actually going towards that purpose?
I am not privy to the specific details of anything that has been discussed at the moment between the two defense ministries, but as and when they agree, I will come to know.
When you think about this more broadly in terms of the geostrategic narrative and the importance of Vision 2030 to not just the economy of Saudi Arabia, but to the Middle East, particularly given the geopolitical unrest we've seen, how much money does it cost to keep this country safe?
This country has been where it is for the last hundreds of years and have been able to manage to protect its territory through very difficult times. We work with our partners around the world to make sure that we bring stability to the region. Saudi Arabia have made a lot of efforts and continues to bring stability to the neighbors around us, and we are actually supporting them technically and financially to ensure that stability is maintained. We're working with the international community to actually put the right resource in place, whether politically or actual military assets, to ensure that the region is safe and the people in the region are safe. Saudi Arabia is playing a very crucial role in the region, and we are employing millions and millions from the region in Saudi. They are supporting the Saudi economy, but they are actually receiving salaries and supporting their families at home, which bring also more stability in the region, which actually helps not only this region but also Europe and the rest of the world. Otherwise, it would be a very difficult region.
So the financial stability of Saudi Arabia is crucial to the stability of the region.
Indeed, it is actually crucial to the stability of the world. And as we assume our presidency of the G20, we wanted to make sure that we bring attention of the G20 to the region and work with our partners in the G20 to resolve some of these issues.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining CNBC.
Pleasure.